Sam Froling, let's get straight into this, mate. I've been looking forward to chatting to you on air for a little while. I want to start with this. What don't you want to talk about? What do you get sick of talking about when you do interviews like this?
Um, I always get the family questions or the some of the what it's like playing in a big basketball family. That can get a bit irritating, but
Perfect. Let's steer clear of that. I was going to start with no, I wasn't. Mate, I actually wanted to just to dig into you a little bit and dig into your basketball background, and we've crossed paths a little bit over the years, and um, a lot of people have seen what you've been able to do, especially the last few years at Illawarra, and it's been really, really impressive. But mate, I probably came across you early days when I was coaching, and you were sort of finding your way through that Queensland South and then Queensland Junior program. Um, Clearly, you're from Queensland North. I'm sorry,
Queensland North, yeah.
Queensland North. Sorry. Tell us about basketball in Queensland, because as a Victorian, and maybe people listening to this in New Zealand, Victoria's always been, everyone talks about as being one of the strongest basketball populations in the world, and certainly in Australia. And Queensland, as an entire state, was never that, but it's catching up. And I reckon you're a part of the era that helped Queensland basketball catch up to the rest of the country.
Yeah, I'd agree. You see some super talented guys coming out of there now, and it's interesting. You kind of see, I think, before even my age group, it had come through in waves. There'd be a couple really good players on a Queensland North or Queensland South team, but it was never really consistently they were competitive and winning. My brother's age group had some really talented players. They had Harry, Will Magnay come through, Tom Fullerton at the time, and then my age group, my team alone had myself, Cody Statman, Aiden Krause, and then guys like Flynn Cameron in the South. Um, but now I think you're seeing it a bit more consistently that these Queensland teams are going to nationals and winning medals almost every year, which I think is a credit to the state as a whole with basketball.
What changed? I mean, you coaching up there. I like the way it's done. Here in Victoria, our kids play literally all year round. There's no downtime. Queensland, you're still breaking into two seasons. I think it seems to be a little bit more balanced than what we do down here in Victoria.
Yeah, I think it's a little different in the south and the north because the north, the nearest places are Cairns and Mackay, and they're both 4 hours away. Um, so for us growing up, we would play on weekends. We call it the top of the north. I think it's called a Queensland Junior North basketball competition now. Um, we would get in a car, drive to Cairns for a weekend, play 3 games a day, Saturday, Sunday. You drive back home, you do 3 of those, and then you head to the state champs. And that's the first time you get to play a team, basically, that isn't Cairns or Mackay. So I think, at least when I was coming through, I'm not too familiar with what it's like now, but what we saw was just us, Cairns, Mackay, Townsville, always going at these battles. And I remember my under 12s, we destroyed both of those teams by 80 points. And then the next year, Cairns were in the grand final at the state champs with us. And it's like, you're just going up against the best in that region for us. I think it made the other teams the best. And South, I think, is a little more like Victoria. They play once a week because they're a lot closer, obviously.
So when did you figure out you were good? I know that sounds like it sounds like a stupid question, but I reckon every player at some stage has this moment where they figure out, hang on, I've seen what the best in the state and maybe the best in the country are like, because you then went on to make clearly the state teams and the national teams. When did you figure it out?
I've actually got a funny story about this. I think I was in under 14s, and there's no state teams at that point. There's no national teams, and all my siblings had started to go on and make their national teams, and they really started to took off. And I was feeling a little left behind, um, and my AFL was starting to take off a little bit. The Suns had just started; they'd started an academy in Townsville, and I was playing some really good footy. And I remember I was shooting with Keely one day, and there was state trials coming up, and I was just like, I don't know, like I'm not as good as you guys. I don't think I'm gonna make it. So like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna do it. Like I might just play footy. And Keely ended up talking to Dad, and Dad sat down, gave me like this big lecture about confidence and um, how good I actually am. And even though I'd only played basically local comp or at a rep level at that point, and how it's my time just hadn't really come yet. And I kept having those feelings for a bit, and then I ended up trying out for the state team, made the state team. Thought I scraped in. Then I just over that next year developed a lot. Go to nationals in Geelong, and we didn't have the best tournament as a team, but I was the best player on our team. And next thing I knew, I was getting picked for the junior Aussie teams, making more state teams, and then off to the AIS. And I don't know, it was kind of that one conversation I think with Keely, and then Dad saw, I can't have him thinking like this, and jumped on it straight away.
Love it, mate. So as you got to the Australian teams, as you got to the AIS, I was thinking before I jumped on for a couple of minutes. So I was actually thinking about Sam McKinnon, and I was talking to my daughter about Sam last night. She's just graduated 4 years of college, and talking about the friends she's made at that age. And I was really lucky to have, Sam McKinnon, Jason Smith, Frank Drumick. We had this group that we kind of went through with as a junior that I always stayed close with, and sort of had similar sort of aspirations. Tell me about your crew. Like, who are you going through this with?
Um, well, it's my main friend is Mitch Norton's younger brother, Max. So we grew up in Townsville together, playing on teams and stuff. And then as I moved away, I went to Canberra. Um, Two guys from the north followed me, and Cody Statman and Aidan Krause. And we were really close because we'd played together so long. And then probably the other big one that's been a bit more, I met when we were juniors at the Institute, but now through my professional career has been Dan Greeter. We've lived together for the last 5 years in Wollongong, and he's been through some tough times, and I've gone through my own stuff that he's really helped me with. So he's been a massive part of kind of these, especially last 5-6 years for me.
Mate, one of the things, even just sticking on that for a minute, is as an Australian junior teams tend to do really well. We tend to compete well. We've medalled in the past, and there's a whole bunch of juniors I look back that I played some junior tournaments with, and you sort of think, where are they now? And they never really turned into pros. So how do you make the step from being a successful junior player to becoming a successful pro in your mind? Because I know that's a process you're in the middle of attempting to do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with me, I think, has just been consistently getting better. It's always, I remember, I mean, like I was talking about with the state team, I come in and thought I was at the bottom rung. By the end of my tenure there, I was the number one guy. I go to the Institute of Sport. It was the same thing. I come in as one of the young guys. I was getting my ass kicked every day. In my opinion, by the time I'd left there, I was one of the best, if not the best player there. And then even kind of my NBL careers imitated that a little bit. Come in my first year, don't play a heap as a rookie. Second year was a bit of trial by fire. Cam Bairstow went down, and I had to play a lot of minutes, but still in that role. And then over this last year or two, I've progressed into more of the main local guy on the team. Um, so for me, it's just, it's a little bit of luck with some of those opportunities, but also just turning up every day, consistent work. I know what my weaknesses are, what I need to get better at, and I keep continuing to work at them. And I think just adding a little bit here and there, getting better, consistently better, adding a little bit, so I can just keep growing and growing.
So that third year at Illawarra, probably we shouldn't go past without talking about it. Justin Tatum, and we're not comparing to any other coach, but he seemed to be a good fit for the program, and he was able to get you guys into a situation in the playoffs that I didn't, and I don't think many people expected you to be in. From a Taranaki Airs point, I think we expected to have you earlier, and as you kept winning, as you got to play, I feel like shit. This is really great. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about. No, but we loved it, of course. But just tell us a little bit about. I mean, this is probably. It seems like a loaded question as I say it, but I've always been a big believer, but that sometimes the best coaches I've had aren't necessarily the best X's and O's. They might not be the best strategic coaches. They can put them around them, but they're the best manager of men or the manager of humans. It seemed to me that everybody respected Tatum, regardless of whether or not he was the most strategic guy or not. It seemed he seemed to have a simple game plan that he built upon, but he seemed to be respected. Is that close?
Yeah, 100%. He the way the guys responded to him, and he's such a nice guy. He was hard on you, but you could tell the belief for him wanting you to do well and be good was there. Um, and I think, in my opinion, him coming from no professional coaching background actually really helped him because he was so open minded to everything. You know, whether it was the strength and conditioning stuff, like loading practices, the other assistants had opinions. He was straight in there. If guys weren't feeling well, he was listening to us. Um, because he'd come from this background where all his coach really, I think, was high school in America, and he'd come over here where it's a little different. He treated us like the men we are and gave us the respect we deserve, and it reciprocated back, and we ended up just gelling together really well.
It's going to be a really interesting watch this year. He got you for preseason. I'm assuming it's his first. It's his first professional preseason, so I guess that's something else he hasn't done. It's going to be a really interesting watch from the outside looking in to see how he handles the preseason. Mate, tell me quickly about college. I just mentioned my daughter. She finished 4 years. York, and a lot of people love that college experience. Others, it's not quite for. It seems like that was you a little bit. You went to Creighton, you had your 1 year. You sort of found yourself down the end of the bench for most of it. Looking back years later, how do you reflect on the season in college?
I mean, I wouldn't change what happened for the world because of where I am today. Um, and I learned a lot of lessons there that I think if I hadn't have gone to college, if I'd have gone straight to the NBL, probably would have taken me 4 or 5 years to learn.
Like what?
Um, well, looking after your body, that was probably the biggest one. So I went in and I was playing some really good basketball when I went over there in the summer. Um, I was even the coaches were like, "Wow, this guy's going to be great." I started our first game, and I was over there, college lifestyle, not eating great, um, partying probably a bit too much, and I just my body I put on a bit of weight, which you know didn't help my defense, didn't help my basketball at all, and so started playing less and less, not doing as well at practice, and then it started to spiral a little bit in my head. I was like questioning why. I didn't handle it, and it just kind of snowballed and got worse and worse. And I didn't change any of those behaviors, and I was sitting there at the end of the year, real unshaped. By the end of the year, I couldn't dunk, um, which was not good for a 7 foot guy. And it was kind of the first. I was 18. I'd just come out of the institute, and I mean, I'm sure you went through it. When you're growing as a kid, you can eat whatever you want. You burn that off so quickly, and it was probably my first year where I'd finally finished growing, and my body was like, "Hang on, we don't do this anymore. You gotta treat yourself a little better." So that kind of stuff was really eye opening for me. And then the fit basketball wise, I don't think was the correct choice for me. But looking back on it, I left and go to the NBL and had my time in Dandenong first, and my main goal there was to really get back in shape, get ready for the NBL season. And going into that NBL season, I knew this was going up against AJ Ogilvy, Dave Anderson, Timmy Conrad, all long-time proven veterans, Josh Boone, who, if I'm not performing, they've proven they can. They're going to be out there. So I took my college experience of not handling the role that they gave me well and changed my mindset to that when I got to the pros, that you know what, I might not like this role or think I can do more, but for where I am and where it's going to get me, I have to accept it and do it the best that I can so that in the future it can grow, which I've been fortunate enough that my role has grown and grown every year.
I love it. Mate, before we get to Taranaki, Japan, because similar to the situation you're in now, and maybe it was the first time because when you hit Japan, just like when you hit New Zealand, you hit their shores as an import, and you're not the bottom rung. You're expected to perform like an import. That was your first experience of probably a higher level of expectation from day one. Yeah, just taking on board what you've talked about with Creighton and college and understanding yourself better and coming off some good NBL seasons. What was Japan like?
Uh, it
I've,
was
I've
awesome.
never I've never
Yeah,
set foot in the country. I got no idea.
it's an awesome place. It was so fun to play. But I think you know what you're talking about, the role stuff and the basketballs. It is another level. You know, you go over there, you're expected to be one of the best players on the team. And I think I have my ups and downs in regards to the basketball over there. I had some really good games, and I had some not so good ones. But for me, I think their rules were a little different too, which took me some adjusting to. You know, they can only have two imports on the court at the same time. So um, I come in as a third import behind Brock Modem and Sean Long, and they were like, if they're going, then you know I might be getting 10 minutes a night. If there's foul trouble or they're not going or Brock got hurt at one point, you know, all of a sudden my role expands to 30, 35 minutes. Um, so that took some adjusting to, you know, not exactly knowing what's going to happen on the night, but just making sure I was consistently ready to play for the game. And there was some games that I didn't perform, but then I'd like to think that consistently I was pretty good throughout the whole time.
Everyone always, the one thing people tell me about Japan, I guess I've never been, is that, and I'm sure you do, you've got 5'11", 6 foot tall mates who say they go to Japan and feel huge. Now, for you and me to walk into a street in Japan at 7 foot, are they as small? The people over there, because all the imports, it's so different in the rest of the world. They always employ centers and power forwards as imports because they got no size. I
Yeah.
mean, how's that element of Japan?
Uh, I mean, it was cool. It's right. You're right. They're all small, but they're all so nice. They're such a polite people, and they make you feel so welcome. But the hardest part about them all being so small is they build everything small.
Right.
So I'm trying to cook in the kitchen, dodging the range hood, or I go to have a shower, and you know the shower comes up to my shoulders. I've got to sit on the edge of the bathtub. Um, so that took a bit of adjusting, but you know we made it work.
Now, all right, mate. Taranaki. We have to do that. I got my hoodie on, and um, you mentioned. I suppose you've said two things already, and I want to pick you up on them and answer them how you want. But you said you've still got areas to get better in, and like you just said about Japan, you're sort of used to coming in on the bottom rung. So clearly, coming into Taranaki, it's in my mind, and when we've had chats before you signed, yeah, to talk about what it was going to look like. But I guess our hope as a club, I'm wondering where you sit now. You've been there for a couple of months or a month and a bit. Is that you're coming in as one of the best players, not only in the team, but I think in the league. But at the same time, have the ability to work on some of those things that you want to get better at. Can you share what those things are and perhaps why you chose to actually come and play in New Zealand this off season?
I mean, the number one thing for me has been the shot. It's been something that I've been working on consistently over the last couple of years, just trying to improve it. And I think I'm at a point where really what I need is game reps and practice reps. Where you know sometimes it's hard. You get in your system in the NBL, and you can't just randomly pull these shots. Everyone will be like, "What are you doing?" So um, that was part of the reason coming over here. And then the other stuff too is just defensively, I can always improve. And the big one for me personally is kind of my leadership role. which I've transitioned as into a captain at the Hawks, and that's just something that I want to keep getting better at. And to come over here where I can keep doing that instead of going somewhere maybe like Japan, where you kind of there's a language barrier and you're just going there um, as like you have a job to do to win them games, but you're not necessarily like a culture leader or that kind of stuff. That was a cool thing about coming over here as well.
When I called you and said, mate, we might be able to sign Mitch McCarron, and because we'd already agreed, I wanted to call you first because sometimes you know what it's like with basketball. Every now and again, I've been a part of something where someone go, "Hey, we've just signed so and so." I'm like, "God, he's a dick," and they, yeah. So and you just went, "Oh, mate, I love Macca." I don't think you have you played with Mitch before this.
We
You've
had
some
that
boomer
the
stuff,
qualifiers,
right?
yeah, in Melbourne.
So how's it been playing with Mitch? Because I mean, he's someone that we were really really excited to get in for those exact same leadership reasons and his ability as well. Even early 30s to grow on what his probably role's been over the last couple of years in Adelaide.
Yeah, he's been awesome. Um, I mean, his ability to pass the ball is I don't. The only person I might put on that level that I've played with would be Emmett Nah.
Right.
Um, those two guys are just they find you in the craziest spots where you think there's no chance his pass is coming. I mean, we've seen him this week. A couple of his highlights, those behind the back passes. It's like I would never throw that. I wouldn't have even seen that.
He
Um,
got he got you on a right hand behind the back, but the left hand behind
yeah,
the back, but
to
his right
Carlin.
hand didn't touch the ball to Carlin. I'm sitting on my couch thinking, what?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
insane, and that's just he. I can't speak highly enough of him. His ability as a player and his smarts and IQ is it's unrivaled, and just his passion for it and his love. It's so contagious amongst players, and I got my first taste of it with the Boomer stuff, and he was unreal in that series. I don't know if you remember watching it, but I think he had 23 in one of the games. Um, and just as a leader, he led us at the Asia Cup with the Boomer stuff, and so when I knew he was coming over here and we are going to bring him, I was super excited.
So what does the season look like, mate? What do you want to get done this year? I don't know when they'll end up playing this thing or how they'll cut it up, but if you got to the end of this season, where do you want to be, mate? Coming back in, or maybe even earlier, because I know let's go earlier, of course. Um, I've always said to you, I see you as a boomer. I'd love for you to be able to get that. I hope that in some small way we're able to be a step in your path to get you there. And you've got Boomers camp coming up, Boomers selection coming up, and then into an NBL season. So it's a massive 12 months for you. Where do you want to be?
Well, it's a tough one because the World Cup or an Olympics has always been my dream. Making the Olympic team would mean I missed the end and final series of the Airs season, which I think we're a finals team, and I think we can get all the way. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It's a good
I'd love
reason,
to,
mate. It's a good
yeah,
reason.
I'd love to stay here and play, but an Olympics it's the Olympics and the NBA have been my dream since I was that 15-year-old kid that started workout. He was pretty good at basketball. Um, so yeah, I mean, where I want to be in Paris in a couple months' time, and then flowing into the NBL season after that. That would be pretty cool.
I said we weren't going to talk about your family right at the start, but one thing that I'd like to ask you publicly is how's Harry doing, mate? Because he went through some shit, and I'm led to believe he's been doing it pretty tough, and I know everyone cares. How's he doing?
Yeah, he's good. He's getting there. He's just in Mackay right now, living with some of the guys, a bit closer to home. But he's getting along. He's getting himself back in shape. Yeah, I mean it's a long process, and he's still battling some demons from it. It's been a tough time for him, but he's in good spirits, and he's having a bit of fun in Mackay.
Well, mate, whether or not we see him on the floor or not, we don't care, but we just hope he's up and well. Mate, I look forward to getting back over there in May and seeing you again in person. Thanks for the chat. Go and enjoy your day off. I know you've only got a little bit of time left before that surf beach gets a little bit too cold. We'll see you soon, Frols. Thanks, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate.